Welcome to Midlife Customs at Craig's Garage. In this video, I install the studs and cut the axles for my 9-inch rear end. If you like working on cars and watching DIY videos, then you should hit the subscribe button because that is what I post on this channel. Please take a quick minute to read this disclaimer. I am not a professional, nor do I claim to be. So I'm working with a cut-to-fit 31 spline pair of axles that I ordered. They're a multi-pattern. I needed the 4.5 pattern. And a narrowing tool from ICT. I think they're also called wishbones. This has a little axle cutout that you can use to mark your axles to cut them. I will add a link to this tool in the description below. I added a couple washers and a couple nuts to hold the tool in place while I mark the axle so that I can cut it. And I also used a combination square so that I can set the depth, and I'll show you how I use this. So I guess there's plenty of ways to mark this. I've heard that people use pieces of PVC and rubber bands or whatever, but I found this to be pretty helpful. I just set it down there and I would turn the axle and make a little mark. And I just continued to do that until I went all the way around. And when it was done, you could see I had a pretty straight line. Here you can see I just held it flat on the tool and then the ruler part up against the side. And as you can see, it just made a really nice straight line for me. Now that I'm done with that side, I'll just remove the axle and I'll put the combination square on the other side of the tool so I can do the same thing. And once I have the axle removed and the other one set in, I'll reverse the square and do the same thing by marking and continue to turn it until I have my line all the way across. Now that I have my marks and my axles removed, I have this metal chop saw that I'm going to use. And I guess the thing is that you don't really want to get these axles super hot when you're cutting them. So I'll just take it slow and take my time and do a nice straight line. But you know, you can do it with a cutoff wheel and everything. But one other thing you want to do is make sure after you cut it that you bevel the end. So you're going to take a flat disc and just kind of roll it over while you're putting a slight little bevel on the end so that when you install the axles, they go in easier. And here's a shot of the beveled end that you're going to try to duplicate. Now that I double and triple checked everything and had my marks right, I just went ahead and cut the ends off. And like I said, I just took my time and just kind of cut a little, backed off until I finally went through them. And here I show how I kind of just put that little bevel on it, and I'm taking off such a slight amount and just spinning it. And I sped it up here because I did it for quite a while actually, but yeah, I just kept spinning and grinding until I was happy with the way it looked. And then I moved on to the next one. And here's a shot of the two pieces that I cut off the ends. And a look at how you can see the bevel on it and how it lines up perfect with the little cutout for the axle cuts. Now I'm going to move on to installing my axle studs, and you can see I had bought the pair of axle that had like multiple bolt patterns on it. I needed the 4.5 bolt pattern, so I just used the rotor and marked my slots so that when I removed it. I didn't get confused later. And then I just removed that and put a piece of painter's tape behind the ones that I was going to do. That way when I'm pressing them in, I don't confuse them for the other ones. Here I just put little marks inside the ones that I knew I was going to have to press it through so I don't confuse them with the other ones. Two other things I needed to be mindful when I ordered these axles was the actual opening for the hub. And to be honest, I did kind of mess up on ordering these because on the Ford, they have these access holes where you can kind of reach the bolts from inside to be able to take it out and be able to remove the axles and work on it or whatever. But they worked out great. And the reason why I wanted these was because they were cut to fit. And if I ever want to shorten it again in the future, I can remove the axles, cut it, narrow it, and put different ends. So that's why I wanted these, so I can somewhat future proof it. So here I show how I'm gonna press these studs in from the back side, and all I'm gonna do is use a socket, and I'm fortunate enough to have a press, so I'll just press these in and I'll show how I did that. But before pressing them in, I did take a moment just to double check to see that everything's matching up with my torque thrust wheels that are going on the Mustang. And you can see here, they line up perfect. So like I said, I'm lucky enough to have a press, so I was able to just put the axles in my press, and before I got started, I just did one more check on the lug pattern and made sure my marks were right, and then I would start pressing them in. Then it just took a couple moments to line everything up and get one started and make sure that everything was going to be flat and lined up. And I took a socket that would sit flat on the surface, but it's also long enough that it's going to be way past the thread, and that way I don't have to worry about coming down on the actual stud part. And just slowly kept pressing it in, not pushing anything or forcing anything. And as you can see here, it went in pretty smooth. I had no problems. Everything seemed to be straight and flat, so I just kept moving forward slowly. And once the stud bottomed out and I was happy with it, I released the press and just continued on like that until I got all 5 done. Once the 5th one was pressed in, I was able to check it, and it seemed like everything lined up great, as I show here. I removed the axle from the press, and then I'll show you a shot of the 2 axles finally fully assembled. After that, it was time that I could finally do a final mock-up. So I put the gasket on there and raised the center chuck, which is a beast to get in by yourself. If anybody's ever done it, you know those things are pretty heavy, but I got it in. I think this was like my 3rd try. It was not my 1st try. So anyway, I threw on a couple the nuts to hold on, and here's a shot of the final assembly. Here you can see behind, I put that on backwards so you can see in between. And then a final look at it all together. So on the next video, I'll do the brake lines and all the miscellaneous stuff and explain about what I had to do with these bolts and also some spacers that go between the lock plates behind the hubs. And here's a shot on the Mustang. I was pretty happy with it, yeah. I have to say, I was pretty excited at this point. not bad for my first narrowing of a 9-inch rear end. If you found this video helpful, please hit subscribe and leave a comment. And as always, thanks for watching.